passenger side axle out, and you can see that the boot tore. So the clamp is still in position, but the boot has separated. And I actually did, you can see where there's been some grease residue leaking out. And then on the rear portion of the shaft, you can see that the worm clamp just basically came off. I honestly don't even know where it went. Like I said before, this is the manufacturer's axle shaft, because as you can tell, it's seen better days. And you know, you see this movement, it should never do that. You should be up here on the neck, clamp down, and then this boot should expand and contract as needed. Same thing on the front. You know, you see how dirty it is, how dried up it is, the cracking and the peeling as it's pulling away from, see right there especially, that's really bad. So basically, right there, that's no bueno, peoples. Ready? So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to start to reassemble the passenger side. And with everything out, the first thing I wanna do is I'm going to take some anti-seize lubricant, and I'm gonna paste along the bottom part of the strut shaft. That's going to go into this orifice of the steering knuckle. So what that will allow me to do is, instead of having to fight to get the strut back in, it'll allow me to get a much easier slide now, and then even in the future, whenever I do any repairs that involve taking off the steering knuckle. I'm also gonna spray this a little bit with some lubricant, wipe this down, make sure I have no extra grip, get out any extra dirt that I need to. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pass this portion up through that hole right there. You see right there? It's gonna seat right there. And then your screw is gonna stick out from the top where the bearing cap is gonna sit in place. And then you're gonna take your nut and you're going to then put that on top of that, of the screw that's coming through. And you're gonna tighten that down as much as you can. I do not know the torque specification. You can always look it up online, or if you have a repair manual, you could also use that. But I'm just going to use an impact gun. I'm going to jam it on there until it's nice and tight. Some parts suppliers will send you a new hat and bolt. I personally am just going to reuse the ones that I have, because the rubber is still in very good shape. So I'm not going to waste it. And I am going to then save the new ones for later on. I'll be right back. All right, everybody. So I got the new strut in place, bolted up, cap on, completely covered. Reference. So you see, put the strut up, the bearing goes in place, you thread that on a little bit, and then you put your nut on to hold it in place just before you lock it down. All right. Then, like I mentioned, I put some anti-seize lubricant on the base of the strut that goes into the control arm. And then all you gotta do is just line up this little notch right here, this little fin, line that up with the slit that is on your control arm, and then give it a nice little wiggle. You don't have to be too gentle with it. Just push it right on up. And now the next part is going to be 18mm nut. All right, I'm going to start that, and then the 18mm lynch bolt, that's going to go back in. Once you get that fin lined up with the opening of the control arm, zap it down, and then your next step is going to be to install the axle, the CV axle. All right, I got the front part of the spindle inserted into the axle port. I put a little bit of anti-seize on the rear portion on the inside that's passing through, which you're not going to be able to see right now. Then I put a very little bit on the spindle. So now the next part is going to be, see if I can shed some light on the situation. So you see those holes right there, along with that flange that's hanging off the bottom. I have to line up those holes and then get your triple square bolts, get those lined up and inserted. So I'm going to start to hand thread them first, and then once that's done, I'm going to continue on with my cordless ratchet, get them snug, and then I'm going to go back in and give them one quick pop with the impact gun. Be right back. All right, so we've got the focus. So we've got the axle bolted in. All right, and I've got it started on the front. So now the next step is going to be, we're going to get our control arms in before we tighten this down, because we want some wiggle. As you can see, we want some wiggle so that we can maneuver the ball joint into this lower portion right here. Right, where is it? Right there, right there. All right, so that little extra wiggle will help us in maneuvering everything into place so that we won't have to do too much fighting. Gonna have to fight a little bit, but not too much. So it's very easy. The long side is gonna go here. The short side is gonna go in there. Then you're gonna get your cross bolts, again, 18 millimeters on each side. One holds down this nut, and the other one, you go at it from the front end to tighten them up. This is your cross, this is your vertical, okay? So I'm gonna go do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so next step. So we got this control arm in, all right? We got that side in. The front side is a little bit tricky, mainly because you can't get an impact gun on there because it's right in front of the oil pan, which you see right there. So if you do not have a cordless ratchet, you're just gonna have to take your time with a curved wrench on the inside and this little window under here. That little window. Don't ask me how it got there. It's just there. I believe the new ones have a pre-molded window in place, so it should be easier on some of the aftermarket front subframes. And so now the next step is going to be finishing with this with the ball joint. So I already have it started, so it was held in place. We see that castle nut right there. And then unfortunately, this one came with a grease fitting, which I'm not very fond of. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to take my smaller jack and apply pressure. Oh, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Oh, there it goes. All right. I'm going to apply pressure to the bottom of the ball joint so it compresses up against the control arm right there until it compresses against that bracket, and then you will be able to tighten it down using just a wrench. All right, be right back. All right, so I got the ball joint tightened up. Turns out that because of the way it was sitting, it was already applying pressure to the ball joint, and I did not have to jack it up to apply pressure to the unit, but I was ready for it just in case. Next step is I'm going to be putting my my tie rod back into place. So I'm just going to swing this on down, drop that bad boy on in, and boop, right there. Nice and pretty. And as you saw, that little gray substance, that was already my anti-seize lubricant. And I'm just gonna start threading the nut back on. All right. and then I'm gonna tighten it down, and then we'll finish plugging up. Actually, you know what? I can just do that right now. Let's plug this up. Boop. And then put that right there. Boop. And then put these right there. Boop. Boop. So then once that's done, the suspension work is done. You just put your brake assembly back on, you know, the correct way. And then that's it. Part 2 complete.